Hello, music lovers! Welcome to episode 72 of What Makes This Song Special. As always, I'm here with a song for you. I'm going to tell you what makes that song special to me. What does it take me back to? What little story in my life does it take me back to? I'll talk a bit about the song as well, as always, and a wee bit about the singer, a wee vocal analysis for a minute or so at the very end. And then there'll be a part two where I will do my own version of today's song, which is of course Metallica, Nothing Else Matters. I dive in, it's a short one today. It was about 2001, round about then. I was about 18, and whilst I was trying to get my band off the ground and write hit songs and rehearse with guitarists and bass players and drummers and all that stuff, I was also working part-time washing dishes in the restaurant of a country club in the south side of Glasgow, which I've mentioned in a couple of episodes. It's definitely, there's a 5-year period there where a lot of stories were born, so it does come up sometimes in the stories. But yeah, I was on about £3 an hour, which, if you're not familiar with British currency, is basically a really, really crap wage. It's really a very, very low amount of money per hour. But it was a job. I'd made some pals there. It was within walking distance of my house, so it ticked a few boxes. While I sort of tried to put the big plan of world domination into place with my band. So one afternoon, I'm walking out of the kitchen. I was about to go and lift weights in the gym on my split shift, which was a real perk of the job, actually. One of the good things about that job was that working in a country club, you basically get a free membership, which would have been really expensive. And so I was able to go to the gym on my split shift, go for a swim, play snooker, play football, whatever I wanted to do. It was really cool. That was a cool side to the job. Anyway, the phone rings on the way out from a split shift on the way to the gym, and it was my mate Davey Monroe, who I think I've mentioned in one or two episodes before. Davey was a guitarist in my band, and he always phoned excited about something. Davey never phoned and just, went, all right, what's been happening? He was always like, I've got this thing that's happened, I've got this plan, I've written this song, I've written a guitar solo. He was always like super charged and excited, and it was very cool. And he was always convinced that we were on the very cusp of stardom. And so I was used to him calling me sounding hysterical on the phone and telling me about someone he'd met or some big thing that was going to make us the next big thing in the music business, sort of thing. So, but this time he actually had some work for us, which was really cool. He'd met somebody in his work who was this guy who was a real sort of synth wizard and a really good producer, and his wife was an incredible singer, and they were called Mark and Cheryl Barnes, and they had a recording studio at their house in Ayrshire, which was about less than half an hour away from where we lived at the time in the south side of Glasgow. So they'd basically struck up a deal to provide clubs in Thailand with dance tunes that were covers of the originals. So quite complicated, but I think there must have been some sort of rights reasons at the time as to why the clubs in Thailand weren't able to play the originals without it maybe costing them a fortune. So there was basically some sort of deal where there was this record company in the Netherlands and Holland who would send through ideas for songs. Mark would then sort of put together a sort of cheesy dance tune backing track, and then Cheryl would put down the vocals, and then they sort of needed other vocalists to get involved. They wanted a male vocal, and of course this is where I came in. Davey had been telling them about me, and he'd let them hear a couple of our demos from the band, and they asked if I would be interested in doing some session vocals for the songs. So this would be my first introduction into the session vocal world, which I've done quite a bit of over the years, and it is a really cool job to do. It's great to be part of that. So it was a wee moment of starting to feel like I was a professional singer for hire, because until that point, most of the gigs that we did weren't paid gigs. They were just under the guise of, a pub sort of saying, oh, we'll let you play at our venue and allow you, the chance to bring friends along and maybe make something of yourself. So it was a bit of an unfair way to do music promotion back in the day. So we weren't used to actually getting any sort of payment for being musicians. So couple of days later, Davey drove us down to Ayrshire, to the Barnes home studio, and we met them for the first time. Or I met them, he'd already met Mark before. And lovely couple. They had two little kids who were running around, and we went up to this sort of bedroom studio that they'd converted to find out what songs I would be singing. And I couldn't believe my luck, because when they told me the songs, it was Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses and Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. So probably two of my favourite bands growing up. I knew every word to every one of their songs, never mind the two biggest hits. So I got the vocal down really quickly, couple of takes, we layered up some harmony parts and some backing vocals. And a couple of hours later, they handed me an envelope with my payment, and I hadn't even asked how much it would be. And I didn't want to look in the envelope while they were there. So we got to the car and I looked in the envelope and just couldn't believe how much was in the envelope. There was £200 there, basically £100 per song. £200 in 2001, when you're getting paid £3 an hour in your day job, is a serious amount of cash just for singing songs that you already loved. So I was over the moon. I was just like, God, I want to do this every week. Unfortunately, it wasn't like a weekly job, but it was nice that we got invited back quite a few times. It went on for maybe a few months. Once every so often we would get a phone call, and also Davey ended up getting involved as well, because they wanted sort of different sounding singers. Sometimes after, I think the first few were just me and Cheryl as the male and female vocal, and then they were like, do we have any other vocalists? Not everybody can't just all be the same two singers. So then Davey got asked if he wanted to do a couple of tracks as well. Davey had a great voice as well. He used to sing all the backing vocals while he was playing the guitar in our band. So on the occasions that it was just me, there were a couple of times where I took the number 4 bus to Ayr from Newton Mearn, sat there wondering what song I was going to be singing. And they never seemed to know in advance, so I always had to sort of hope that when I got there they would unveil a song that I already knew. And I got lucky a few times, and then other times I got unlucky, and it was a bit trickier because I was having to learn a song on the spot and then record a finished version of it within the space of an hour or two. So they were longer days because just the vocals didn't go down as quickly. The hardest one I can remember doing was this Ricky Martin song that was to be sung in Portuguese. I was like, I've got no idea how to sound Portuguese or how to pronounce any of these words, but we got there in the end just line by line by just sort of impersonating Ricky Martin on the original track, just faking it, completely faking it. And I remember wondering at the time how a dance version of a Ricky Martin song sung in Portuguese was a popular listening choice for people in the nightclubs of Thailand. None of it added up or made any sense. I was always a bit dubious that something funny going on, and I don't think there was in the end, but it just didn't seem, I don't know, it just didn't add up, but for me, it was great money doing something that I loved, so it was a complete no-brainer. And one of the times Davey came with me and they asked him to sing Metallica Enter Sandman on top of this synth dance tune, which was absolutely hilarious. But it spawned this chat on the way home about Metallica. Now, I'd loved heavy rock and metal when I was in my early teens, start high school kind of time. And for quite a few years, I listened to every rock band that ever existed, and some metal, and even some death metal and stuff. I got into some really heavy stuff at one point, maybe when I was about 13, 14, thinking it was really cool to like the heaviest bands that you could possibly like. And for some reason, I just never got Metallica. They always seemed kind of corny to me. I know people will hate me for saying this because they're a super band, they're an amazing band, a really, really popular band. But for me, something about them made me sort of cringe. I don't know why. And, retrospectively, I probably appreciate them much more now than I did at the time. To be fair, I don't think I ever really gave them enough of a chance. But the music just didn't resonate with me. Like some things just get to you and other things just don't. And they just didn't get me, or I just didn't get them. But Davey, who was listening to me have this conversation out loud in the car on the journey home, was sort of agreeing, but because he also loved lots of, being an amazing guitar player, he was a real rock guitar player, rock and blues. So he also loved guitar bands, and Metallica, just for the same as me, like they weren't his cup of tea. They just didn't really resonate with him either. But he'd said to me, you know, there's this one song. There's this one song that I know you'll love. It's a great track. I'm sure that he was like, I'm sure the tape's in the back somewhere. And I remember like looking in the back of Davy's car from the front passenger seat and just thinking, oh my God, there's like about 100 cassette tapes scattered all over the floor in the back, all over the back seats. He always had like tapes. He would just take them out and throw them in the back. So he had this little navy blue Renault Clio. It was full of music and usually his little dog Sandy and all these cassette tapes of different guitar bands and stuff. So I'm rummaging about behind the front seats trying to find some of these albums while he's driving down the motorway, and I find a cassette case with the iconic Metallica logo on it and the outline of a coiled snake, and I was like, I recognised that. It's a very iconic album cover I'd seen a million times before in like record shops and stuff like that. So we stuck it on. The first track, of course, was Enter Sandman on that album, which we'd just been hearing all afternoon because it was just about to be, you know, a huge hit in the Bangkok nightclubs. And you know, we fast forwarded through to hear this track that Davey was convinced I'd like. He was like, oh, it's further on. So we were fast forwarding through all these heavy guitar songs, and on comes this acoustic sort of, or at least very clean, you know, undistorted guitar sound, quite classical sound. And of course it's the introduction to the fantastic ballad, which was of course Nothing Else Matters. Just what a tune, you know, what a song. I was thinking, why have I not heard this before? This has like been out, by this point it had been out for 10 years probably. And so the two of us drove home listening to that track on repeat, talking about what sports car we were going to buy when we get signed, or, you know, what the future held, what the sellout crowds that we were going to play to would look like, that type of thing, you know. And we were, you know, for once our pockets were full of cash after doing something we loved doing, just singing and getting paid to sing, which was just really cool. And it was the kind of conversations that Davey and I had every time we got together. And I think anyone who's watching, who's ever been in a band, or ever even started a project with friends or whatever that you're excited about, that you think, oh, this could be something amazing. You know, I'm sure that people, when they start a business, are like that and all those types of things. But we're just so excited about, you know, the next song we were going to write and the next gig we were going to play, all that stuff. It was just amazing. So great times, great memories, a short story, but that's what the song takes me back to. It takes me back to like that day in the car with Davey, just listening to Nothing Else Matters on repeat, talking about Ferraris and Porsches and all that type of stuff. And in those times, just getting paid £100 a song to sing, when I was really skint and getting paid £3 an hour. It was just amazing. So there we go. That's why it's a song that's special to me. That's why it you know, when I hear it, I just makes me happy because it takes me back to a certain time, you know, which is what songs should do. They should make you, you know, emotional in a way. So as always, I'll talk a wee bit about the song itself. Nothing Else Matters is, as I mentioned, a song by American heavy metal band Metallica. It featured on their fifth album, which was called Metallica, which I always thought was a bit strange. I've seen it sometimes when bands call their debut album after the name of the band, but not usually when it's their fifth album. Anyway, bit random, but it was released in 1992 and it got to number 11 in the US Billboard rock charts, number 6 in the UK singles charts, and it also got to number 1 in quite a few European countries, I think Denmark, Sweden. So really cool, really successful track, very different to everything else that they'd ever recorded at that point. It was written by lead singer and rhythm guitarist James Hetfield, who wrote it about his then girlfriend in 1990 while he was on tour and sort of missing having a normal life and the relationships that a normal life can have when you're not somebody who works away and is on tour all the time, sort of missing his girlfriend and missing the normalities of a sort of 9 to 5. It wasn't ever written as a Metallica song. It was something that he'd written for himself, and didn't really think it fitted the Metallica heavy metal hard rock vibe. But when their drummer Lars Ulrich heard it, he loved it, and he helped Hetfield finish writing it, and he convinced him to bring it to the band, where, of course, it became a huge hit. So that's a wee bit about the song. And again, I will, as always, tell you a little bit about the singer. I'll speak about the singer. James Hetfield is obviously a super successful rock/metal vocalist. To me, though, he almost had two completely different voices. On the first 2 or 3 albums, he sings much higher and sounds more like a sort of typical 80s hair metal rocker. You know, he's trying to be more Axl Rose, Steve Tyler, even Robert Plant in there. There's a lot more head and mix voice being used and some screamy distortion. But by the Black Album, which I think is album number 3 or 4, he sounds like he's sort of had enough of the high stuff. Maybe it was just too high for him to sustain and it was giving him problems, and he didn't, work on, how to get up there without hurting his voice. And he just started to sing much more in his chest in a sort of lower, in a lower key, or lower keys, with a sort of throaty growl that also was quite, quite a fatiguing style to try and copy. He used a lot of sort of vocal fry in his onsets, and that became his identity from sort of then on, all the way through to today. I don't think he can, be considered as one of the best rock vocalists of all time, because there are just so many big hitters in that world. But he has got a really aggressive, cool voice that just perfectly suits Metallica's sound. A really cool singer. And a band that I suppose retrospectively I just never fell in love with them, but yeah, they've undoubtedly inspired hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people to pick up a guitar, and and they've touched people emotionally through music way more than I have. So I can't really. It's more of a personal thing, But an amazing band, super band, and so there's my wee story. So that's why the song is special to me. Why is Nothing Else Matters a special song to you? Leave me a wee comment. If any of you are looking for vocal lessons, get in touch. If you're wanting to help me progress the channel further than the 1.2 thousand subscribers I've got or something at the moment, please keep pushing these episodes to your friends, to your family. Share them, like them, subscribe. It would mean a hell of a lot. Thank you. And I'll see you next week for another song and another story.